Hey, everybody, and welcome to a very special and exciting episode of our little live stream podcast. We're going to give everyone a chance to kind of trickle in and find their way here before we get started. But I'm here with Dalim.Ink, and yeah, Mehdi, and I'm super excited. So thank you for coming on, Mehdi.
Hi, thank you.
Mehdi,
Thank
yeah,
you for having me.
yeah.
The name is hard a bit, huh?
What is it?
The name is a bit hard, huh?
Yeah, Mehdi. Yes,
Yeah.
not a silent H. So I not a silent H. This is gonna be fun. I'm super excited. We're gonna chat about scripts and comics and
All the
yeah,
fun stuff.
yeah, and it's kind of funny because we've gotten to collaborate a little bit, and this is our first time kind of chatting face to face. So it's fun. So yeah, let's um let's give folks a moment. And also, I just want to let people know that if you want to drop any questions in the comments, we will kind of circle around and try to get to those. So please do not hesitate to drop those in. Um, yeah, this is going to be fun. So, how are you today? You're in Algeria, right?
Yeah, it's actually 11:30 right now, and
Oh no.
yeah. What's
um,
good about it is that the neighborhood is quiet now. Everyone is sleeping.
true. Very true. Very true. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
God. It
Other
was
than
worse
that,
when we were
everything
in New
is
York. Hmm?
in New York. It will be obviously more crowded and noisy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was constantly like if when we were shooting most of the stuff in New York, it was just like no matter what time of day, it could be 11 at night even, you would always just hear like cars and sirens and people yet people chatting. It was lively. I love it, but it was definitely
It hurts.
there was no
The pro-
quiet time.
It hurts the product. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a canary in the balcony right behind me, and whenever I try to record something in daylight, I will have to do it 3 or 4 times because the canary can't stop singing.
That's kind of cute. That's kind of nice, but I could see it. It's kind of cute
It's
for the
not
first time.
sometimes, maybe once or twice. After that,
Absolutely. Cool. So why don't we get into it and we can kind of get going on this interview. So yeah. All right. So, welcome everybody to the Young Screenwriters podcast. This is kind of a place where creators and writers can come and talk about the stuff that we love to make and how we make it and our craft and process. And today I am super thrilled to have a fabulous guest with us, Mehdi Dali, aka Dalim.Ink from Instagram. And he is a comic creator. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and what you do?
well, it started long ago. It will be a long story, just a little bit. I'll try to sum it up in a few chapters. It all started when I watched cartoons, obviously.
Yeah.
I used to draw like boxy cartoon characters, and then it evolved a bit as a hobby, of course. I never gave it much thought. I was even young. When I was in middle school, my arts teacher told me that I should give up. She knew my mom, so she told me that
Oh.
I should just be present and not do anything, and she will give me a good mark. And
Oh.
that's it.
Oh. That rough.
It went that way. After that, I went to high school and I gave up on art completely. In university, I tried to come back. I never stopped looking at the art community. It was always here in the back of my head. I tried doing realism. I learned a lot of realism back then, doing portraits and all, and that helped me get the basics of art and all of that. I even did some commissions here locally to people, drawing their portraits, their pets, boyfriends, girlfriends, all of that. I made some money, but then I got a job, a real job, out of at a pasta factory, and I forgot about art completely. After that, I got married. That I went to engineering university. Uh, Everything from then didn't include art until I got married. And after like 1 year of marriage, I decided to come back. That was like 3 years ago, exactly 3 years ago. I decided to come back and I started learning from the beginning. I removed all my knowledge of realism and realistic art and tried to get a more stylized artwork. And after that, I tried, at first, when I started art, I tried to go into video game development, but it was hard for a one-man per team. I needed to be the
Yeah.
developer, the marketer, the artist, and all of that. And then I decided that I should choose one of them.
Mhm.
And I chose art. I picked art and I continued and I learned. If you go back in my Instagram account, you will see my early stages of developing the style, transitioning from realism to more cartoony style. And here we are. I started taking commissions. I started working on my comics. I started working on video games for for clients, of course, not my own. And we're here.
That's awesome. So, something that was interesting to me about what you said is that you kind of had this discovery process where you started in realism and then you wanted to kind of leave that behind and find something more stylized. So what was that how did you find the style that you have today? Because it's so unique. Like how did you come into your style and find your own voice?
Do you know the saying, you are what you eat?
Yeah.
In art or in any creative process or any creative endeavor, you are what you consume.
Mhm.
Whether it's art, whether it's music, whether if you're a musician and you listen to classical music, you can't make rock, for example. Your
Right.
style, even if you make rock, it will be leaning towards classical music. It will be affected by the classical music you listen to. If you're a writer and you read some of the writing of some particular reader, you will be affected by them. And that's how
Right.
the style develops. What I did in my case, after learning realism, of course, realism was the basics. It was the streamlined way of art. You had to learn it, the boxes, the squares, the line, the shading, and all of that. And then you come to a point where you need to sell. You need someone to consume your product.
Right.
And really, doing realism, you will be just another artist, another a printer. A printer can print realism. A camera can make realism. I can take a
Right.
photo of something and print it, and there you go, an art piece, a realistic art piece. And you will never be as good as a camera. But I went ahead and looked for the artists I like. For example, I like the lines from this artist, the colors from this one. I like the shading from that one, the storytelling from the other one, and combined them and got my style, my own style that I'm now developing.
That's very cool. So, kind of using your style, right? You've been kind of playing with your own comics and working on other people's comics and all of that. So, like, what kind of stories do you think really thrive as comics?
As comics, the ones that really, really thrive are the more visual stories, the more where you have to, where if you read them as in a script or in a book, you will find a lot of descriptions about places, about landscapes, about people, how they look, how traditions, for example, fantasy. fantasy is great for comics. Fantasy and sci-fi. Well,
Hmm.
sci-fi is a bit hard because it's closer to, it's more industrial, while fantasy is more random. You can literally draw anything and give it eyes, and it's a new creature.
That's true. That's true.
More, more visual stories tend to be more better at comics than other ones. You can have a drama, you can have a crime, you can have anything, but the more visual ones usually are greater or better than the other ones.
That's cool. So that's something that we think about in film too, is that like, when I'm trying to decide to write a script, whether it's TV or a feature or something, it's there's always kind of question of like, okay, why is this story best told as a film and like not a book? And film is the same way. It needs to be something that's very visual and an external journey. Even if the external reflects the internal, it still needs to be shown in a way that the audience can actually see and perceive on their screen. So I guess
Like
comics are kind of similar that way.
exactly the same way. One panel in a comic can tell a lot. It can even tell 2, 3 pages written.
Hmm.
2 or 3 of words can be seen in one panel, just one panel. In
Yeah.
one panel, you can see the traditions of people, you can see their clothes, you can tell how they tend to themselves, what they do in their daily life. That's just from one panel. You
That
can
actually,
even chapters. You can write chapters about it in a book.
yeah. The picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Exactly.
That reminded me of something that you actually taught me because I had the amazing privilege to work with you on a little script I was working on. And something that you told me early on, yeah, something that you told me early on was when I showed you a script was I was like, I don't know, I don't have any idea how many pages this is because I gave you a scene. I said, I don't have any idea how long this would be in comic form. And you told me, well, every action is its own panel. Could you kind of speak to that a little more and like that process?
Uh, I will put an equal sign like this and put in front of it, put the attention of the reader.
Mm.
If you
Mm-hmm.
put too many things in one panel or in one scene, the reader will be confused to what's happening. You can only lead them from one panel to another by telling them exactly where to look and what's happening. You can't have someone talking to someone, and while someone is doing, you can do that, but it's, you need to know what you're doing in order to do it, and not do
Mm-hmm.
it randomly. If you remember, I also asked you one very important question at the beginning before we started the project. I said, I think you're an experienced writer. You're not a beginner.
Yeah.
Remember that, because working with a beginner, I can I can I can give them much how do I say it? I can give them more feedback or more guidelines to how the story would look like. Working with a more experienced writer, I can follow them
Mm-hmm.
to their vision, just like that. That's why we do one action per panel. Sometimes, in fact, it happened to me with a client. Someone came to me with a story. It was like a concept of the story of the comic, and he wanted it in one page, which is okay. It's totally okay. But the story was too long. There were a lot of actions. How he described the panels, it was like maybe, I think he did it in 5 panels. When I broken it down, it came like 15 panels or something like that,
Wow.
maybe double or more. Yeah. What I we did the project and he liked it, and but what we did was to rebuild the story from scratch. New panels, new dialogue, new everything. We did a lot of show don't tell, and in order to keep the story, the base of the story, we kept it. but we removed a lot of the unnecessary scenes and dialogue pieces and all of that.
Mhm. No, that makes total sense. So it's like I guess that kind of feeds into another question I have, which is like when you're collaborating with writers, right? What is the best way, like in your opinion, what's the best way for a writer and an artist to work together? Is it best when you're like equal creative partners? Is it best when one person kind of comes in with a vision, or what is your advice for when writers and artists work together?
It actually depends on the project itself and the experience of the two partners. Sometimes the artist is more technical.
Mhm.
Well, let's go back a little bit. The comic project in as a whole has three major steps: the story writing, the storyboarding, and then the art. The artist is the expert on the art, while the writer is the expert on the writing. The
Mhm.
storyboarding part comes to experience. Sometimes the writer can envision and can make storyboards. I worked with a lot of writers who sent me storyboards already ready. All I had to do was draw them in my style. That's it.
Mhm.
Sometimes I would get some feedback, but it was minimal. And other times I worked with writers who gave me total freedom. They only gave me the story, and I did all the storyboarding, all the thumbnails, and I sent them, and they gave me their feedback and their validation, and they confirmed that they liked them. And then I went ahead and drew them. It actually comes back to experience, and that is something the writer and the artist need to talk about in the beginning.
Mhm.
They would need to agree on who's the leader of the project, as we talked before.
Yeah,
That way,
absolutely.
when there comes sometimes when they are both right. Art is subjective. You can't be right or wrong. I mean, the writer can be right, can have a vision, and the artist can have another one. What then?
Yeah.
Do they cancel the project? This
How do you
happens.
handle that? Yeah.
Sadly, it happens a lot. It happens a lot. Someone needs to step back.
Mhm.
The one who agreed to step back, and the one who agreed to lead should decide.
That makes sense. So that was something that before we hopped on, you told me that you are building a channel, right? A YouTube channel that's kind of
Yeah,
talking
right.
about.
That's
Yeah,
my goal
that's
this year.
that's awesome. And you've already put in so much into it. Like you mentioned that you had like a little goal of like, oh, I just wanted to get a couple videos in, then you did like 25 or something. Like you did, or how many videos did you do?
I think 62 in 1 month.
62. That's pretty cool. That's pretty wild. So, yeah, what you were just saying kind of talks about the things that you wanted to talk about in the channel, right? Like with the productivity and like deciding who is going to be the creative leader of a project so that you do have someone to defer to if that kind of stuff comes up, right? Do you want
Someone needs
Yeah,
to make
and
the decision.
yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Here's a question from our audience that I think is interesting that kind of plays into this, which is what are your thoughts about AI creating comic books and how do you make your work stand out? Should we or should we not fear AI?
Well, this one is a hard question, to be honest. AI
Yeah.
is here. AI is here and it's going to stay.
Yeah.
It's going to stay. It's not going anywhere. And making comics, I think it will take some time for AI to be able to create comics because
Mhm.
AI cannot create the same details in every panel, even if it could. Even if it could. Let's say one day the robots learn to make comics and learn to make art. how we are going to stand out as humans is by being original. You can see it with art and traditional media. I've been a traditional artist for so long, and I know that digital art came and every artist on the planet said that digital art is fake art. Now 90% of artists are making digital art, while the 10% that is doing traditional art is making more money than all the 90%.
Oh, interesting.
The value of traditional art became a lot more higher than it was before, because before it had the ability to make traditional art and everyone could do it. If anyone decided to become an artist, he would go traditional. But now, your first choice is to become a digital artist. You might
Right.
not even become an oil painter, for example, because all of the fumes and all of the mess and all of that. I still have my I still have this for with me. I haven't used it for like I think 5 years or so, but it's still here. I look at it
Yeah.
every day.
That's pretty great. Reminds you where you came from.
Not worry about AI. We should embrace
Yeah.
it. We should use it. In fact, we should use it. Sometimes the imagination of the human mind can stop at some points, but we can use AI to get some new ideas.
Yeah. That's kind of been my personal stance on it is I, like in terms of capabilities, AI is only going to get better. And so the idea of like, oh, it's not good enough, that's only going to be true for so long. So it is important to kind of think about, okay, well, when it is good enough, what kind of relationship do we want to have to it? Because one day it will be good enough. And my thought is, I personally think it's a really fun tool for ideation and for internal stuff, like for just kind of getting ideas out, getting inspired, thinking, and then,
We should,
but then for actually like external stuff, like if I was going to make a comic, I'd want to work with a person. That's just kind of my personal little thing about it.
we should we should think about AI like we thought about the phone.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when the phone started, it was just something rich people would use to flex on poor people. And the company wasn't that practical. It would have been better to send a message by horse instead of waiting for the phone to call and all of that, or looking for someone with a phone. But now, no one is working without a phone. And if you don't have a phone, I think you're late. You
Yeah.
literally have an assistant right here in your pocket.
Yeah.
You can ask it any question you have, and it will answer correctly.
You know what? This is random, but I used to absolutely, like when I was watching Pokemon as a kid, I would be so obsessed with how everybody had their Pokédex. And then like Digimon, everybody had their little, I think it was a watch or something. And like in all these shows that I loved, everybody had their device. And then when I got older and I realized everyone had a phone, I was like, oh my God, it's our Pokédex. We have
Welcome
it.
in. Yeah, and that is going to evolve even more. For me, for
Yeah.
example, I'm using AI as an assistant.
Hmm.
You can obviously tell my English isn't that good, and ChatGPT, for example, is helping me a lot in writing my comic. I have the ideas, I have everything, and it can expand my ideas, and I can
Yeah.
change it however I want to.
Absolutely. It's a really easy sounding board for bouncing ideas off of something or just like and kind of getting thoughts about how you can flesh things out and translation. It helps me with translation stuff too. So it's a fun
Better than
tool.
Google.
Yeah.
It's better than Google.
Yes, it is. So here's another question that I think is interesting, and then we have quite a bit of questions coming in. But this kind of ties to what we were, to like talking about how we get inspiration from AI, but I'm sure there's other things that inspire you too. Pamela says, "How do you stay motivated to create? Do you ever have moments where you get blocked or stuck, and what do you do to push forward?"
As a creative and as someone who works actually in a similar field, as I was saying, I work in the pasta industry, in the pasta production industry. I work a lot with processes and systems. The key to staying motivated, motivation actually does not exist. It's a word, it's just a justification for procrastination.
Mm,
There's no such thing. There's work, there's time, and there's work. You need to put some blocks. You need to put some blocks of time, specific or specified for work. I'm going to work. Uh, I have my brother who is a pixel artist who I am pushing to make pixel art forcefully. Uh, he comes back from work, and the first thing he does is open a game. I said that's okay. I told him that it's okay to open a game. I gave up my gaming time to work more, which is something I'm sad about. Until I quit my job and I get to do this full time, I can go back to game.
oh
But
yeah.
until then, what he does, he comes back from work and he opens up a game. He plays until 10 p.m. and
Mm,
then he falls. That's it. That's all his energy. He plays like for like 4 hours. And I told him that only 30 minutes a day can make a difference. What I did
yeah.
to him, how I pushed him to work for that 30 minutes. It's boring. Working is boring when you don't want to do it. I put up a YouTube video on his computer screen, a 25-minute video, I think, music video, lofi music, something like that. 25 minutes. And I said, you are going to work for these 25 minutes. You're not going to touch your phone. You're not going to play your game. You're not going to do anything. You're only going to make art. And he did for like a month or two. Now he got better at it. He's better at animation. He's better at pixel art in itself in general. And he's getting a lot of clients as well. And
That's
that's the key
awesome.
to, yeah, that's the key to escaping from art block and all of that.
So you turn on kind of like a background music type thing, and you say, "This is I need like this is the time that is going to be work time for the duration of this video for like listening to this background music." That's really smart. That's smart. I like that. Is that the kind of tip? Sorry, go ahead.
It's the only way to focus on something. The music video is like a timer. When you look at it and you have 10 minutes left, okay, I need to work this 10 minutes and then I can go play my game. I
Mm-hmm.
need to play, I need to work 10 more minutes and then I can go scroll social media, for example.
Yeah. So kind of giving yourself an end point, right? So like you're like, okay, I see the finish line. I can get there, I can do it, and then I can still do the things that I want to do. Like you're not saying never touch a game ever again. You're saying, you know,
Exactly.
yeah, just a
I'm
little
playing
bit.
4 hours a day. I can take 30 minutes off.
Yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of. Is that the kind of stuff that, so we did mention your YouTube channel a little bit, but are these the kind of tips that is stuff that you kind of want to share with other artists on that channel?
Yeah, hopefully when I'm done with the experimental phase, because 62 videos per month is a lot. Don't do this. I'm skipping like 10 years of YouTube videos in 1 month. Trying to get
That's,
all the experience of 2 years or 3 years or so in 1 month.
you're getting it done. You're getting it done. So
I'm getting a lot of feedback. Yeah,
yeah, and I bet you're learning a lot in the process too. So,
true, true.
and so here we go. We have a question kind of bringing it back to comic scripts. So, talking about script structure and templates, and how scripts should actually look, right? I know that, so to kind of give a little bit of an anecdote, because my background is screenwriting, when we worked together, I came to you with a straight up film script. Like mine was formatted like a screenplay, and I said, "Is this okay?" And you were like, "Yeah, it works." But is there another format that's best for scripts, or what's your, I'll let you kind of run with it. What do you think about like the way scripts look for comics?
As I said in the question with the experiment of the writer and the artist, it also comes to that. If a script writer is not good enough to write script, sometimes you find a writer who can write a story, like literally write a story. Someone went down somewhere and did some of that and this and that, and then the end. And he cannot write the script in the standard known manner that everyone, the industry knows. It's better that he writes the story simply like that, instead of going and making mistakes that will confuse the artists. If you get what I mean. The artist better reading the script, reading the story, and then translating it to the script. It will take more time for them to translate it, but it will be better. The product will be better. They will translate it. For me, for example, when someone sends me a script, sends me a story, for example, not a script. When someone sends me a story, how I translate it is I do it actually in Excel, in Microsoft Excel. I go write it down. Yeah, I go write it down action by action. And then I say what's important in that shot. Is it the expression? Is it the action, the environment, where they are, where the character, what he's doing, what he's saying? Is it the reaction of the other person? Is it something else I want to show? And then I define the type of the shot, all learned from YouTube. And then I go ahead and draw it. As simple as that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, working with more professional artists needs to have a script of some sort.
I just shared this link that I found a while ago that was really helpful for me, where it is a collection of, it's basically a comic book script archive. And so you can browse through how a bunch of different comic book artists wrote their scripts. So there's stuff in here from like Neil Gaiman. Like there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. And what's interesting is that it really shows the variety. Like it really is that it seems like with comics, you do focus more on like, it doesn't look exactly the same as as like a film script, but like if we look at Neil Gaiman's one, let me pull that up. You can kind of see that his is honestly a little messier than most people's, just kind of like this blob, but basically breaking it down by page and by panel and having the dialogue that's in the panel. And so his is kind of all over the place, which I thought was interesting that that Neil Gaiman would have such kind of like a messy one, but some of them are really neat, but mostly it's including the visual details, like you said, and really focusing on like, okay, what's the important elements in this? So any dialogue that needs to be said. Here's one that I looked at the other day that's a little more organized, but it was kind of fun because she also has little references and things like that. And this is from Hawk Girl. And yeah, I would recommend checking out this link if anybody is interested in kind of seeing what other artists' comic scripts look like. But
I will be checking that.
Yeah. It's a really cool little resource that I found because I was like, it was driving me nuts. I was like, what is...
Sometimes you find a beginner writer who limits you with panel count and page count, and he wants you to do it as they want. And you can't do it because it will just look bad.
Yeah, that's true.
And you have
That's
to
kind of like,
cancel the project from the beginning. You can't work with someone like that.
yeah, that's like, one of the things that for me is important, and I'm working on a comic with you, and then there's somebody else here with us, Rachel, Ray Agner, who we're also kind of doing a little project, and it's it's really fun because my whole thing is I want to let the comic creator have as much freedom as makes sense. I want to give enough direction that like you know that like it's helpful for you, because I find that some parameters are helpful. But at the end of the day, it's like I know that my expertise is not identifying what's going to be in every single panel. And I'd rather not box you in by saying this is what must be in every panel. Like this is how it must be written. So yeah, it's kind of a balance, right? And it's like I guess if you're a writer, so a lot of our audience are writers, kind of, I guess part of the takeaway is understanding, I guess not being afraid to try, but then if the artist tells you like we need to have a little bit more flexibility, being open to that. Would you say that that's true? Like,
Yeah, I think that is actually very true. And one 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 way to bypass that and not fall in the trap of not agreeing to something in the long run is to tell your artist the story.
mm-hmm,
Tell them the story from beginning to end. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. In story beats, no need for detail, because sometimes, many times, the writer doesn't know the details of the story that will come from after that. But they know how the story will end. They know what's going to happen. They have the structure ready. They have the key beats to the story. The artist needs to know that, and he needs to know, because when you say that you need something in a panel and that it's important, he knows why it's important.
right, right. So instead of just kind of being like arbitrarily saying, in this shot, there's a blue truck and there's all these things happening and blah, 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 blah. And then your artist is like, well, why? Is the blue truck important? Is that.
Exactly.
Yeah, exact. That's actually, I think that that's probably why screenwriting and comics really kind of go together well, because film is very similar. When you're writing a screenplay, it's not your job to direct the actors. It's not your job to dress the set. It's your job to give the dialogue, to kind of like help like show the action, but your focus is the story and only information that is crucial to the story, right? Not like extra details just because you want to. It's only stuff that is absolutely serving the story. And it seems like comics are kind of similar in that way, probably because they're both so visual mediums.
Exactly. In my case, when I'm working on my own comics, I usually don't write anything. I only write the main beats of the story to the end, and then I go ahead and write each chapter, or the chapter that I'm working on, and no dialogue, only when needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't write any dialogue. I do the drawing. I do the in the thumbnail phase, of course. I do all the scenes. I do all the storyboards and all the thumbnails, and then I go ahead and add dialogue where it's needed to explain something, or it's worth something to the story. Instead of working and writing and then being confused what's important and what's not, even when I'm the one writing the story.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. I think that was something that was helpful for me in screenwriting. Was I started by writing by writing short films that were silent shorts, and it really made me think about the visuals and stuff and realize that dialogue is nice, and it's a nice kind of like icing on the cake, but it's not the foundation necessarily. Like you want to be telling a visual story, and then the dialogue can add something on top of it if you're not using it as a crutch, right?
Beginners tend to use dialogue a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
and most of it can be scratched out,
Mhm.
and the story wouldn't change.
Yeah. It's kind of that's it's really striking to me how similar comic writing is to screenwriting. So, I have a question from Carl up here, which I think is kind of interesting. Um, what gets you excited about a project? So if somebody comes to you about a project, what makes you be like, "Yes, I am so stoked that I had this one." Like,
It's actually the story.
yeah. Mhm.
If I like the story and I'm immersed, I'm full in. I'm
So, what to
the
you is an
outcome.
indicator of a good story?
Well, the plot, obviously, the characters, the world
Mhm.
building, everything that comes with it.
Mhm.
A
That
good
makes
story
sense.
is a story that leaves an impression.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Have you and then Carl's follow-up question was, have you ever been pitched an idea that you just had to do? You probably run into that quite a bit when you do.
Exactly with the example with the story that I had to do in one page, the one that I told you about in the beginning. The artist, the writer just wanted to do it.
Mhm.
And I had to work a lot with it, with him, and modify the story until it fit. And we made it in 9 panels, and that's a lot. And those are action panels. Yeah. So having 9 action panels in one page is a lot. The pacing was slow and there was a lot of action. It was a mess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is so you mentioned action panels. Are there different kinds of panels? I guess that's not a term I'd ever heard before.
Yeah, action panels. Well, action panels is what they are called. They are panels with actions in them. And
Mhm.
we use them in pacing.
Mm.
When we're doing a dialogue, for example, when two characters are talking to each other, the panels are usually small and they are rectangular. They are uniform in shape. And there's a lot of them in one page, which means the pacing is slow. While with action panels, you find 3 panels, even 1 panel per page.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay. So are the other
angles
panels
are
hmm?
the camera angles are not formal; they are informal.
Informal, yeah?
Yeah,
Mhm.
informal. Yeah, the camera angles are informal. There's a lot of they are messy. They are confusing. They get this feeling to the reader that something is not right.
Gotcha. That's cool. So, are the other panels called just like dialogue panels or normal
Just
panels or normal panels? Yeah.
yeah.
That's cool. That's just stuff I'd never been exposed to. That's really neat. So, I guess kind of, as we're kind of coming to the end of our chat, a question that I have for you is what projects do you currently have in the works? Like, what kind of stuff are you working on that you're excited about? And yeah.
I am work I am working on a web comic right
Yeah?
now.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just posted a video the last 2 days on YouTube. Well, telling the story, a little story about my failed web comics and how that. Well, I did 3 web comics before. I did two, and the third one to correct and to slap myself in the face and get back. Well, the first comic was called it was called uh, Adam and the Shadow Realm.
Mm.
It was a story that I think it was the first story that I did as a webcomic, and it kind of flopped with, I didn't know anything. I was learning, but I had a lot of ambition. I had the motivation and all of that. I wanted to make a webcomic. I knew how to draw a little, and I wanted to put something. And then I did like 3 or 4 chapters and then looked back at it and gave up. I didn't know where it was going. My
Mm-hmm.
art was bad, and not the art part, but the storyboarding part was bad. The thumbnails were bad because art doesn't matter just between brackets. Art doesn't matter at all. It's like 20%. It matters 20%, while 80% is all about the story and the pacing and the storyboards. So that project failed, and
Mm-hmm.
I failed it. And then came another project, which is Hero of Tree. And I gave myself the mistake that I made was that I learned a lot about storyboarding before starting that project. But the lesson that I learned is that I gave myself killer deadlines that
Mm.
I couldn't keep with client work on the side and with my day job on the other side, my family. I only had small amounts of time, and I didn't know how to manage that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I decided to do something small, something to slap myself in the face and finish something from beginning to end, just to know the process. And I did Hero of Cree. The comic, I posted it on Instagram. It's 30 pages long, and it was just a comic to put something out there. Every day a page. It didn't need to look good. It didn't need anything. It just needed to be there, needed to be done. And after that, this year, I started working on a story. I wrote it last year, and I started working. I'm actually doing it. I'm taking another way, another another path to approaching this. I'm doing it on my phone. I bought a new phone, the Samsung Galaxy Note, which has a pen. Yay! And I can draw on
Hey,
it.
nice.
I can do this. I can doodle on this. Like if I have 5 minutes of free time, I can doodle. What I did was on the Notes app. Let me see. It should be here. Yeah, I wrote the story like this. Oh, I don't know if you can see it. Like
Oh, I
this.
see it.
Yeah,
There it goes. Perfect.
yeah. Every
Yeah,
chapter, story beats, some actions, everything is here on my
that's
phone,
cool.
and I'm using an art app to do the sketches and the thumbnails, just like this. There we go. Just on my phone, just so it doesn't take
Yeah.
much
Oh,
time.
I think it's yeah.
I'll go. I can zoom in. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so that was like so you're doing the webcomic style where it's like the long scrolly. Okay, yeah.
And I'm planning to publish this by the end of this year, hopefully. It will be like
Mhm,
30 chapters long or so.
mhm. That's awesome. That's really cool. I was going to oh, it looks like our connection got cut a little, but I wanted to pull up while we up. Let's see if he's able to come back. But in the meantime, I was planning to show off his Instagram so you all can kind of see how awesome his stuff is. So I wanted to share this with you. He does some like really amazing, lovely stuff. Um, I think that this was part of the comic that he was talking about here, which he said doesn't matter if it's good, but this looks pretty freaking good to me. I that's I absolutely love his style. So hopefully he's able to come back and um say hey to us some more. But I would absolutely love to do a part 2. So I would love to talk to Mehdi about doing a part 2, and we could even collect some questions beforehand to make sure that we kind of get to everything. Um, let's see if here we go. Yeah, I mean, like, look how good he is. I'm such a fan. So forgive that. But to kind of get into this question for a moment, when working with a freelance artist off Fiverr to bring the comic to life, what are some contracts slash agreements that we should be signing? I know that when you're working with an artist on Fiverr, there is kind of an option that's popular on there, which is making sure that you as the writer have the commercial rights to whatever you're producing. Um, and I think that that would be important as the person who is kind of to the person who is like uh leading the project or paying for the project, to make sure that you have the commercial rights so that you can so that you can make sure that you have the ability to kind of to publish them. Let me see if Mehdi is still here. So let me see if I can grab him again. One second. And if not, that's okay, because we were coming up on the end of the time we have, and I would love to invite him to do a part 2. So but yeah, I think that in order to answer that question, Alexis, I think that the main thing is that you want to make sure that you have clearly said before you start the project what the commercial rights situation is going to be. And that's something that if you're working with an artist on Fiverr, a lot of times you can like check it as an add-on, or you can see if the artist already includes the commercial rights. Um, I don't know necessarily that you need anything more extensive than that if you're going through a service like Fiverr. I think that that's kind of like an agreement that's baked into the system of going through there. But if you aren't going through Fiverr, then finding some sort of like a template. This is not legal advice, I have to say, right? But finding some sort of a template or an agreement that talks about commercial rights, and just making sure that you're straight up with your collaborator from the beginning about like what expectations are, and setting them appropriately. Like making sure that you'll say like, I'm going to credit you for this and blah blah blah, but ultimately like I can go and get this published somewhere, and that's my choice, or it's our shared choice, whatever you decide. Making sure that it's agreed beforehand is going to be important. Oh no. We'll see if he can come back. But, in the meantime, please, everybody, if you all have more questions for him, please don't hesitate to drop them in the comics. And, since this was popular, maybe we can do another one again. And I would really encourage you to also check out his Instagram. There's a bunch of links that we have in the description of this video where you can see his Instagram, you can see his YouTube, which is really awesome and kind of dedicated to productivity and like being an artist, and and like what goes on behind the scenes into the creation process, and tips for other creatives. And I know he's still kind of figuring out what people want. So I would really encourage you to check that out. Check out his Instagram. And then I also linked to his Fiverr, where if you want to collaborate with him, he is available. He is available there. Anything about publishing? Yeah, we could absolutely talk about that next time. I'd be really curious about that. I know that, publishing on I will say that from what he has told me, one awesome way to kind of approach publishing is, well, first off, you want to decide what you want to do with it, right? Like, is this a web comic or is this, oh, here he is, he's back. Hang on, let's follow him.
Something went wrong with the tablet, so I'm using my phone.
Well, we got you back.
Yay.
So
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good. I was giving you a promo. I was showing off all your stuff. So
Yay.
So I guess the last question of the day, and then we have some people requesting that you come back and we talk some more another time. But for the last question for the day is about publishing. So what I was starting to kind of talk about was that when you and I really like default back to our experience working together because that's what taught me so much. But when we were working together, you mentioned like thinking about, is this going to be like a traditional page or is this going to be a web comic in like the vertical format, right? So I guess at the beginning, I would say that you want to think about what medium you want it to end up as, right? Like if you want it to be read online or if you want it to be a traditional comic. Do you have anything to say about the publishing process, like sharing it with people and stuff like that?
This one is actually a transitional phase. We are in a transition. Is my audio good in the beginning?
Yeah, there we go.
I'm using my phone now. I'm not on the tablet. This is actually, we are in a transitional phase where classic comics are printed and digital comics or web comics are read on phones, which are vertical.
Right.
You can't print vertical comics on paper and they would look weird. And you can't have classical comic pages, even though people are doing it and most of us are reading comics and manga on our phones. But it's weird. We have to zoom in to read each panel and see what's going on. That's why. That's the only reason to think about when thinking about publishing. Like, for example, also there's also one. It's hard. It's going to be there will have to be the remaking and redoing and retouching when trying to go from vertical comics to normal page comics. But you will have to change the font size, you will have to change the location of the speech bubbles, everything. There will have to be a lot of work.
So where do you publish
and
your
on the other hand
go ahead, sorry.
On the other hand, I'm going to answer a question with that question, with the continuation of the previous one. I'm publishing on Webtoons and Tapas, the online publishers, because they have a lot of readers. As a beginner comic publisher, I have small following, and they have a lot of readers who want to read comics. So that will help push the comics out, and then you can change to anything you would like. You can even publish it on your own website if you would like, after you build a small audience to that comic.
That was something that you also gave me a lot of guidance about when we first started working together, was how do you build a following for you as an artist and the stories you want to tell? Could you speak to that for a second? I know that's kind of outside of what I warned you I wanted to ask about.
That's actually hard. That's actually really hard to work on. Yeah, it's really, really hard. You need to follow the trends. You need to do all the marketing things and all the boring stuff, to be honest. A lot of boring stuff. If you just share like panels of the comic, you won't get followers. You won't get a new eyes on the comic. People follow what they already know. So you will have to reach them out, hook them, and grab them back and keep them. How to reach them is by putting something that's trending out there. They will see it, and then they will ask. Some of them will ask who you are and check if you put for example, we did an example with the characters when we said, like, with the female characters.
Yeah.
On Instagram, for example, you will put the hashtags of all the other characters that are known by millions. And that's what we call in marketing is, how do I say it in English? I know it
You
in
can say it in
Arabic, but
French. Oh, in
it's in
Arabic. You can
Arabic.
say it in Arabic.
ركوب الموجة. That's like getting on the wave of the trend that's going on, getting on the wave of marketing. Say, for example, this time there's the game Pal World, which is like trending, like crazy trending. For example, for me as an artist, I can go and draw some fan art. And or I can say the same, I can do the same post that we did on Instagram and say the most ferocious creatures in games. And I will put one of my characters in there. And people will ask about it. If it reached, for example, 100 people, at least 5 of them will ask about my character and they will know me. And now I'm building the audience slowly. That's the reaching. And then it's the hook. When they come out and check my profile on Instagram, for example, or on YouTube or anywhere, they will see something that they like, something they came for, something like the thing that grabbed them in the first place. And that's the hook. And then I will be keeping them. I will be keeping them by giving them value.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how you build it. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time.
I was going to show the post that you kind of helped me, like to kind of give an illustration of what you meant. So this was this is the stuff that we've kind of worked on together, and you recommended kind of doing a like here's some cool female protagonists from other ones that like inspired me. So we pulled up, you know, a few other female protagonists that we loved, and then at the end tossed in ours, right? Our own character at the end. So that was kind of like one of the things that we tried for there, which was a lot of fun.
There's also the aspect of consistency and the quality over quantity. Creating quality content takes time. And you need to create the quantity. So there's a conflict in there. And focusing on making the art or writing the story, you can't have that time to post. You can see on my Instagram that I'm not posting anymore. I'm not posting as much as I did once. One year, in my first year, I did post 3 times a day.
Wow. Yeah.
And now I just built the base of my audience. Some people know me from then, and I'm keeping them. I'm sharing. Whenever I share something, they're there. I know they are there.
Absolutely.
Even though I'm not posting as much.
So I was gonna share that you've done stuff like this, like where you kind of
exactly. It's a meme.
Yeah, it's a meme and it's your art, right? So
and these are the characters from the comic that I'm working on right now.
Okay. So
yeah. I'm trying to build the audience for it.
And you are. You've been doing great on your Instagram. I saw it and I was like, whoa, what? It's pretty cool. It's really working out. So I think
you can notice that these type of posts get more likes than the other ones, than the art only post.
Right. Yeah. Just because it has a bigger appeal, because this, you know, it appeals to people who don't know you, right?
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Yeah, this one's a fun one too. I love that little guy. But yeah, so cool. Well, you know, I think that kind of covers everything that we were going to get to talk about today, but people really loved this, and maybe we'll have you back another time to talk more about comics.
I'll be looking forward for that.
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on and for joining us, and thank you everybody. To kind of give everybody here a little hint about what we're doing, a little sneak peek about what we're going to do next week. Professor John Warren is coming back, so NYU Professor John Warren, and we're going to talk about breaking into the screenwriting industry. So kind of like breaking in. Any questions that you have for that, you can drop here. beforehand. You can also show up and ask live. And if you check the description of this episode, you can see links to all of DalimInk's stuff, and you can also see links to like our Discord and communities that you can join to kind of stay in the know. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today, and thank you so much, Mehdi. Sorry, I feel like I'm messing it up so bad, but
Yeah,
Mehdi,
it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
Mehdi, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, we'll see you all next week.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.